Welcome to DRC Live, powered in part by Classic of Denton and the Denton Record-Chronicle. The views and opinions expressed by the show hosts and their guests are those of the show host and guests, and not necessarily those of the sponsors, DentonRadio.com, or the Denton Convention and Visitors Bureau. For more information, visit the Policies and Procedures page at DentonRadio.com.
In Denton, Texas. I'm Lucinda Breeding. I'm the features editor at the Denton Record-Chronicle. I'm usually here with my colleague, business editor Jenna Duncan, for our weekly show, DRC Live. As you can tell, this is not Jenna Duncan. Jenna Duncan, she covered the election last night. So it was a very, very late night. So we're giving her a bit of a reprieve. Sitting next to me is Mike Barrow, the managing director of Denton Community Theater, which is in transition and merging. And we actually have something pretty exciting to talk about today. We've been talking about here at DRC Live since, I guess, last August about the 50th anniversary of Denton Community Theater and its Golden Series, or Gold Series. Golden Series. You can say Golden if you want.
It's golden. It's golden.
Yes. And this series it's a series of community outreach events, a lot of them free. Some of them have a little bit of a fee. But just reaching out to the community to celebrate the theater's 50 years and all of the different ways that the theater has intersected with just workaday life here in Denton. And there is a Gold Series event coming up. It is Come From Away, The True Story. It's going to be at 3 p.m. on Sunday, which is March 8th. And it's going to be at the Campus Theater. That's at 214 West Hickory Street. Now, it is free, but reservations are required because seating is limited. So to make reservations, please call 940-382-1915. And is there a deadline for?
There's not a deadline, but people need to know that we seat $299 in the theater, and right now, when I left, I checked, and we are at $235.
Oh, okay. So reservations have been made.
It's going to sell out.
It's going to sell out. Well, I thought what I would do is kind of remind folks about Come From Away. This is a Tony Award-winning Broadway show, and one of the characters is actually a Denton County resident. Her name is Beverly Bass. She's a former commercial airline pilot. She was the first female pilot hired by American Airlines, and she was one of, I can't even count, pilots ferrying passengers to the United States on September 11th, 2001. That was the fateful day of the World Trade Center attacks, and that fateful day resulted in the closing of American airspace. So Beverly Bass was flying an international flight from Paris, France, back to the U.S. when she got official orders that she was going to have to divert her flight and land in Gander, Newfoundland. Right. Now, Gander, Newfoundland is this tiny town, and they have this, long-standing airfield that I believe was kind of a hot spot for pilots during the Second World War to refuel.
That was the refueling spot for overseas flights.
Yeah, so it had been busy, and it had this history to it, and it's still an active airport. But about 7,000 passengers landed at that airfield in Gander, Newfoundland, and then disembarked. I think they actually kind of stayed on their planes overnight, and on September 12th, they got off their planes and they walked into the airport to greet pretty much all of Gander. Had been cooking all night, and they had food lines set up, and they had gathered supplies, and all those passengers were grounded in Gander for, I can't remember how many days.
4 days, I think.
Yeah, 4 days, which, when you're trying to get home or when you're trying to land somewhere, I'm sure not everybody and all those passengers were calling the United States home. But when you're trying to get somewhere, 4 days it's a long time to be grounded.
Well, especially in the midst of a terrorist attack.
Absolutely.
You don't know what's going on. You're
Absolutely.
Because if you remember, 4 days after, we still didn't really know what was going on.
That's true. I remember that.
And if more was coming.
Oh, gosh. It was, if you remember that day and that time, it was a very strange, surreal moment in American history.
Absolutely.
So what does this have to do with musical theater? Well, Come From Away, which is actually what people in Gander refer to people who visit, and maybe people who transplant and decide to live in Gander. But it's really about how the town opened its arms to these strangers and tried to really create a home for them. And Beverly Bass, this Denton County resident and retired airline pilot, she's a featured character in the show. And there's a song called Me in the Sky that really tells her entire life in aviation in like 2 minutes or so.
Yeah.
So she's going to be at the campus theater on Sunday. And what can you tell us? What can people expect from Come From Away, the true story? What's going to be happening on Sunday?
Well, I feel very fortunate that Donna Trammell and I were able to sit down to lunch with Beverly and her husband Tom
Stawicki.
Stawicki.
I never say his name right.
Who is a longtime campus volunteer. Tom ran lights for us. He ran the spotlight. He graduated to the lighting board. But for years, he was one of our great volunteers there. So we got to go to lunch with them and pretty much get a preview of what we're going to see and hear Sunday. And it's absolutely one of the most fascinating stories I've ever heard in my life, to hear it from the perspective of both of them. Not only is Beverly, who was right in the midst of it, but Tom, the person at home, who was,
and they didn't know. They didn't know how long they were going to be grounded.
I asked Beverly, which I'm sure we'll talk about on Sunday. I said, I can't imagine as a pilot flying over the ocean, and all of a sudden you get the word that New York airspace is closed.
Yeah.
And then 5 minutes later, you get the word that the entire United States airspace is closed. And I asked Beverly that day, I said, what went through your mind? And she said, I wish I could tell you. But she said, honestly, every minute of my training kicked in at that very moment. And so all I was thinking about was landing that plane safely wherever they told me to go. And, of course, as we went, the word terrorism came out, and we, started speculating on what was happening. But I didn't realize this, but apparently when you travel across the ocean like that from Europe, there is a dead pocket there, and so you're not communicating with any tower anywhere. You're only communicating with other planes. So all the conversation was the speculation between all the other pilots, what was going on, and that in itself was just gave me chills.
Absolutely.
To think about being, because again, we all know how surreal it was for us here on the ground,
being here on the ground.
We did things that I would have never imagined. We came home and had a talk with our kids that night on an emergency plan. If we get separated, here's where we're all going to meet, and we're going to tie the towel on the door to let you know that mom and never imagined I would be having that kind of conversation. So basically, what we're going to get to hear are both of those stories from Tom's perspective here at home. And from Beverly's perspective, as the actual pilot, one of the pilots, I think 33, or something like that, jumbo planes,
jets, yes.
Landed. One of the funny things, and it's in the show and it's in Beverly's interviews on YouTube, is she said, where do I park this thing? and it was literally a question, where do I park it? And she said she had to wedge it in somewhere to get out of the way, but.
It's not Dallas International
Airport. Exactly.
Dallas Fort Worth. It's not DFW International.
There's basically no terminal there. It's just runway.
Yes.
So it, the pictures actually they look like a parking lot.
They really do
for big planes. And, but we will. The other exciting thing that we're going to have on Sunday is Beverly has also written a children's book called Me in the Sky, Between Me and the Sky, and. So she's going to read that book for us that day, and we're going to have some of the books there for sale that she's happy to autograph. But again, Tom's story is just as fascinating as Beverly's is. And then when you get past 9/11, that story, and you get into the story of the musical, Come From Away, it even gets more, because they had no idea that this was going on. if I'm correct on my recollection here, the play was an idea of some folks who they had a reunion every year in Gander.
They did, yes.
And
it was the 10th anniversary.
The 10th anniversary.
That a lot of people who had been there were able to go back.
Right.
And I believe the playwright, I want to say, if I remember correctly, is a married couple.
Yes, they are.
And I think they were doing interviews.
They interviewed as many people as they could during this reunion. And at that time, they hadn't really set any of their characters. They just had this idea that this might be a great story, which, of course, it turned out to be a tremendous story. I'll never forget Tom Stawicki coming into my office somewhere 2015, and he sat down and he said, Mike, do you know anything about investing in plays?
And he's like, yes, I can tell you many things about it.
And actually, I said, absolutely nothing, Tom. I know about getting the royalties
investing the time
for plays and how it works for us, but as far as investing actual money, no, I don't. And he proceeded to tell me the story that he's going to tell on Sunday, and I sat there literally for an hour and didn't say a word. I just listened to Tom talk, and the story of how they became involved in this play, and what a thrill! I mean, for Tom and Beverly both. But there's certain things that are in the play that are just them. One of the it's in the song "Me in the Sky." One of the lines is, there I was putting pins on the map. Well, Tom said, this is something we did over the years. We would go on weekend vacations. And, being lucky enough where they could pretty much fly anywhere they wanted to in the world, they might fly to Paris for an overnight stay and a dinner, and they'd come back and put a pin in Paris. And so that was Beverly's phone call to Tom.
Put a pin in the map.
Put a pin in
Gander.
Gander, because the deal was they had to stay overnight to put a pin in it.
That's right. That's right. Yes. That's right. Yeah.
So that's where that came from. But anyway, we're going to get to hear their entire story and
details that aren't in the show,
exactly,
obviously, because the musical truly is it's an ensemble piece that makes the characters are probably composites of all different sorts of people who live in Gander.
Right.
Now, Beverly Bass, she's not a composite. She is the Texas pilot, who blazed a trail. So there are some of those, really those named characters, but I think the accents are wonderful. In the music, I'm like, what's that accent? It's not what I'm accustomed to.
Once you've heard it a couple of times, you now know what a Newfoundland accent sounds like.
Do you know will any music from the show be played at all?
Absolutely. But before it's over, we will have played the whole soundtrack.
Oh, excellent.
Through the course of the afternoon. Of course, during that time when Beverly's signing books, we'll be playing whatever hasn't been played during the interview. So,
and the Broadway tour production will be coming to Dallas on the 10th.
On the 10th, it opens up in Dallas.
Yes,
and that's another thing. I sound like I'm selling tickets for the campus theater, but if you want to go see that, don't wait, because these shows are selling out everywhere it goes.
Yeah, people love the show when it was up for its Tony Awards. What was so neat for me, because I was at home, getting ready to write the story about, is it going to win a Tony? It was so wonderful to watch on social media as people I know from Denton talking about having seen the show on Broadway and how it just made them feel really good about the human race.
Yeah.
And really good about how people really can step up, pull together, leave that whole idea of stone soup. Well, we weren't expecting to double the population of our town overnight,
right?
But you get some potatoes and I'll get some cheese and we're going to feed these folks, So
you and I were joking around about some things our parents used to say.
Yes.
And like I said, my dad loved to say, this has to happen before this happens. And of course we all wish that tragedy never happened on that day, but there were so many bright things that came out of it, and Come From Away is definitely one of those, and that story is one of those silver lining things that came out of that whole tragedy. one of many.
One
of
of
course,
many.
But,
It was far. It seems so far away from New York, and indeed it is far
Yeah.
away from New York. But it was one of many stories that I think made us all remember that we are
right.
one.
Right.
You know.
Right. One of the funny stories that we're going to, and I won't elaborate, I'll let Tom do this on Sunday, but we actually had a little bit of campus theater go to Broadway because Tom, I forgot how many hundreds of times Tom and Beverly have seen the show. And in fact, when the show opens, by the way, at a different, on a tour, they actually fly the real people into to the opening. And so as many of those people go to the opening as possible. And then when they do their curtain call, the real people come out with their doppelgangers.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so
I didn't know that.
So that's been a big thrill for them to be able to do. But Tom, through all this, kind of let it out that he had run some tech at the campus theater. And so somebody asked him, part of the Broadway crew, said, "Do you want to run a spotlight tonight?"
Oh my gosh!
And he actually
A Broadway spotlight.
Tom says he actually had to go that afternoon and audition to make sure he knew what he was doing. And
When it turns on, it has to be in the right spot.
Yeah, and he said, had it not been for my time at the campus theater,
right?
I'd have never gotten that opportunity. And so he actually ran the spot during the
trickier.
second.
It's trickier than people know.
Oh.
I was a follow spot operator in high school for a hot minute, and I actually had to come in before my first rehearsal and practice focusing or aiming it so that when I turned that sucker on, it was shining on the right person.
Right.
So it's a little trickier than you might think.
Well, Tom said it was so cool because when they would say, okay, we want you to go tight here, and he knew what they were talking about, and now pan left and pan right, and he said, I felt like, I got this.
I know how to do this. Thanks, Campus Theater. Thanks, Campus Theater.
And on top of this, they're just two of the nicest people.
Yeah, they
in the world.
really are.
It's been such a pleasure to work with them up to this point. It's all of these Gold Series events have been special, and we've loved that people have come out and participated in them. This one I'm looking forward to more than any of them because I think it's just a story that's absolutely worth telling, and I think our audiences someday, maybe when I'm an old man, we'll get the rights to Come From Away.
I was going to ask you if you thought that was a possibility.
I absolutely think it will be, and if you've seen the show, it's a very doable show. It's not set heavy, it's not prop heavy.
Yeah, it's not a technical monstrosity.
And all you have to have is great musicians and great voices. Yeah. Well, we already know we have that.
We might be able to find that here in Denton.
If you just saw Sweeney Todd last week, you know that's not a problem. In Denton.
We seem to be able to unearth fantastic singers in Denton.
That's right.
Well, so this is it. Okay, just to repeat, 3 p.m. Sunday at the Campus Theater. Come From Away, the true story. Seating is especially limited, as we found out. So I would call sooner rather than later, 940-382-1915. We are going to have a very short story about this particular show in Denton time tomorrow. But I do hope that you'll take a look online at our slideshow of photographs, because we did a series about Beverly Bass and her experiences with the show, with, flying across the ocean on September 11th. So we have some of those archived photos. So feel free to check that out. And thank you so much
for
being here today.
Just real quickly,
Absolutely.
The Gold Series, I just wanted to mention that the next Gold Series event is going to be April. You mentioned the consolidation a while ago with MTD and DCT. On April 18th, we will be revealing the new name of the new company. At the Campus Theater. We're going to start about 6:30, and we'll have a little reception out front, and then we'll all go into the theater and reveal that new name. So we're pretty excited about that.
I bet, because it's been a year in active sort of transition, maybe even longer than that.
Right.
But for those of you who might not know the acronyms, MTD is Music Theater of Denton. It started out decades ago as a Gilbert and Sullivan light opera company.
Denton Light Opera Company.
And then it morphed morphed into a musical theater company with a new name and a new brand. And finally, Denton Community Theater and Music Theater of Denton are merging, and you will find out the new name and see the new logo.
Look
in
on the website and Facebook. We're going to have a really cool game leading up to that.
Yes.
So play that game, and if you play that game and bring it in that day, the results, then there's some great prizes that day too. So maybe even season tickets for the new inaugural season
yes.
of the new co, as we like to call it now.
Yeah, so keep your antennas up and your eyes open. Visit us at dentonrc.com. You can also visit dentoncommunitytheater.com and pick up a copy of the newspaper, get your e-edition, and we will see you, we being myself and Jenna Duncan, who is not here, we'll see you at 2 p.m. next Monday for DRC Live. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Cindy.
And bye, Denton.
See you guys.
Well, thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed the show. We want to thank our partners and sponsors who made this show possible. And now stick around for a word from all of us here at Discover Denton. Do you love live music? If so, make Denton, Texas your next vacation. Find more information at discoverdenton.com.